Yeah, this is huge for the business community. Economic development isn't just incentives, it's making sure we have a stable tax environment, and that includes tax administration and the system that kind of dictates that. So when companies are looking to evaluate where to invest, whether it's an expansion, a new plant, job creation, they're not just looking at tax rates, they're looking at the overall tax environment. And this is a really important part of the tax environment. And so it's creating predictability, which in turn creates competitiveness, administrative efficiency, which helps our economy grow.
And we want to make sure that the environment in Ohio is a great environment where we can attract economic development, where we can attract companies, where we can attract businesses to invest here. And that's part of what 613 is going to do.
Definitely.
I know Representative Gary Click, one of really the best in the country, of course in the state of Ohio, but across the nation. And yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to have Representative Click and Klopfenstein for sponsor testify.
But there's no more local control than Bob and Betty Buckeye.
Well, that explains why he keeps saying, well, that's not the way Representative Click does it.
I'm not supposed to get emotional, but I am.
Then we sat down with Click to discuss his bill and the controversy surrounding it.
And the chair would like to invite Representative Click to present testimony.
The question is, shall the bill pass? The chair recognizes Representative Click.
Welcome back to What's Clicking with State Representative Gary Click. I'm Janae Myers, his legislative aide. Today, we will have a very special guest on the podcast, Liz Baumgarner. She is the Senior Tax Policy Analyst at the Chamber of Commerce? Man, it is.
Yeah. Liz is the Senior Tax Policy Analyst for the Ohio Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, she is awesome. Representative, what all are you guys going to be talking about today?
Well, let me just say this. She warned me ahead of time. She says, I might nerd out on this because she is very detail oriented when it comes to tax policy, and she's just a wonderful person. And she and the Ohio Chamber came to me earlier this year, and they said, we've got some legislation that we'd really like for you to carry. And we talked about it, and it's really about a taxpayer bill of rights, because so many times the taxpayer gets caught in the middle. And if there's an error or if they assess something incorrectly on you, we all have a right to dispute that. We have a right to appeal. But that appeals process is only as good as the process. And right now there are no time limits. There's no boundaries on when they have to actually give you resolution on your taxes. And so she didn't think that was fair. She brought it to me and said, I don't think that's fair. How can businesses thrive without having some resolution? Listen, if we actually owe it, then we're going to pay it. But if we don't owe it, we need to know. But what happens is that, if you're appealing, guess what? That takes an attorney, that takes an accountant, that takes specialists that you have to pay all along the way for that appeals process. And if it's not an efficient process, that's costing you money. And it shouldn't be that difficult to get justice through the system. And so we are carrying House Bill 613, and we look forward to getting a hearing on that soon and being able to present that and make sure that our small businesses are represented when it comes to tax policy.
Absolutely. Well, I, for one, am so excited to hear this podcast episode. Do we want to jump on in?
Let's jump into this interview with Liz.
Thank you for joining us again today, and I am so thrilled to have one of the all-stars of Columbus with us today, Liz Baumgarner from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. Liz, welcome to What's Clickin'.
Thank you so much, Representative. I am so happy to be here and talk taxes today.
Wow, taxes, everybody's favorite topic, right?
I think everyone's pumped up for the topic.
Yeah, they're pumped up when they get their money back and when they get their problems solved. But when they get that tax bill, it's like, ew. And especially if it's wrong.
Especially if it's long or drawn out.
Long
so we'll address
and
both of
drawn
those.
out. Yes, and that's what we're trying to solve with House Bill 613, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And I remember when you came to me and said, Representative Click, would you be interested? And you told me what it was, and I said, absolutely, 1,000% I'm in. And so we are carrying a House Bill 613, which is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Tell me what led you to bring that to me. I mean, what was the issue? What was the problem that some of your clients, some of the members of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce are facing, and why you thought that maybe I could be helpful with that?
Yeah, of course. No, thank you so much. We are so appreciative that you've been willing to champion House Bill 613. So I specifically cover tax and economic development policy at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, and this is a purely member-driven initiative that is a very big priority for the Chamber, this General Assembly. So we have regular tax committee meetings where our member companies get together. We have over 8,000 companies in membership. And there was a very, very common theme in these discussions with members that, hey, when we are filing petitions for reassessment, refund claims with the Department of Tax, and then, down the line, appeals with the Board of Tax Appeals, they are experiencing years and years delays, unfortunately. I think the shortest timeline that we had heard from our members was 2 years, and it
That's
goes all the way
ridiculous.
past 7 years. So we said, hey, what can we do? We started looking into the code. We found actually a very, very old section of code called the Taxpayer Bill of Rights that we thought would be perfect to amend and try and beef up and ensure clear, predictable timelines and due process for Ohio's taxpayers and businesses. So it really was like a floodgate when we started talking about it with our members. So many people had said, hey, we're having this problem. Hey, we want a better way to kind of communicate. For example, the original Taxpayer Bill of Rights included a provision to create a problem resolution officer. We wanted to beef that up a little bit and make sure raise awareness that this person exists within the department, that they're there to help you if you're not hearing back, if you have questions, maybe if it's not an active case, but you have state tax questions you need resolution on. So you'll see in the beginning of the bill, we start by giving more authority to that
Right.
problem resolution officer.
So let's just pause here for a second because
Yes, thank
that's
you.
a lot. And
Yes.
you warned me that you might nerd out on this because you're really good
Yes,
at this
thank
stuff.
you.
And I'm glad for it. I'm so glad to work with you on this. So, but let's just for the people who are watching or listening online, let's just break down a couple things. So really, there are two agencies that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the tax commissioner and we're dealing with the Board of Tax Appeals. So
Correct.
for the layman, explain the difference between those two agencies, please.
Yeah, of course. So you have to actually start all of your state tax resolution cases with the Ohio Department of Tax. So that's kind of the first step. So the department will come in, they'll issue a tax assessment, and then the taxpayer essentially appeals that but files a petition for reassessment with the department. And we're finding that the issue is it's taking very long, so the taxpayer isn't able to then appeal their case up to the BTA. So the BTA is kind of that secondary oversight body in the tax appeals process.
And so you start off working with the tax commissioner, the Bureau of Taxation, and so forth, and then they give you a decision. You don't like their decision, you can appeal to the Board of Tax Appeals, and then we can also appeal to the Supreme Court after that. Correct?
Yep, correct. There's kind of 3 stages for that appeal process. So, you hope you get resolution with the department, but it's very, very common for those cases to then be appealed to the BTA. And again, hopefully you don't get up to the Supreme Court level, but we do see that
Right. So.
among our members. So we want to ensure the
Mhm.
due process and timely resolution in these cases.
And sometimes it can just wear you out because it just takes so long. And I wonder how many people just give up because the red tape and they just like forget it. I never get resolution. I'm just going to give up, or how many people continue to fight it out and to stick with it because they want justice and they want to make sure that their taxes are right, that they're not overpaying.
Exactly. A lot of our members do stick with it. They're in these cases for years and years, as I mentioned, but unfortunately that becomes very, very costly and burdensome.
Right.
Yes.
So even when you win, you lose.
Exactly. If you're getting a decision, it's not without having to put that work and the resources into it, unfortunately.
And whether you have your own attorneys that you're paying or if you hire an attorney, there's a lot of money that is spent just to win. So it still costs you to win. When you ought to be able to do this in a reasonable amount of time. Now, so with 613, we're looking at where we're at now and then what we're trying to do. What is the statutory deadline right now to complete a hearing?
Yeah, there really aren't statutory
Right.
deadlines right now, and that's part of the problem is even to get a hearing, our taxpayers are facing extremely long delays after they request that hearing. So one provision we really like in the bill is to have 180-day deadline to set that hearing once the taxpayer requests it. So we think that's a pretty reasonable amount of time just to have the hearing. And we do have kind of safeguards along the way to allow extensions. if the taxpayer and department agree, or if the taxpayer requests it, so that that can be extended, say if the department or BTA need to do discovery during that period.
So that's the starting point is 180 days. So we've got a benchmark, we've got a marker. This is the goal, 180 days. If there are extenuating circumstances, that can shift, but that's the standard is 180 days, according to House Bill 613 that I should mention. Representative David Thomas is also my joint sponsor on this, working with us on this. What is the deadline right now for a determination?
Um, so right now, the taxpayer has 60 days to file the original petition for reassessment. The commissioner can then issue a corrected or canceled assessment, and the hearing is technically required if asked, but there's no deadline to actually schedule that, as I mentioned. So interest is continuing to accrue this whole time on businesses. We do, after the 180-day hearing deadline, have a new concept to allow a taxpayer to request to see their proposed determination.
According to House Bill 613, there's going to be a 180-day deadline for hearings. Currently, there is no deadline. And then we're going to say after a year, you can appeal to the Bureau of Tax Appeals. But right now, there is not even a deadline to have a determination. When you're appealing, you have no guarantee of a hearing and you have no guarantee of a decision. It could just go on and on and on without any guarantee of a due process, including a timely resolution to your appeal. Is that correct?
That is correct. And interest is accruing along the way. You know, there are some deadlines on taxpayers under current law, like the taxpayer has 60 days to petition for reassessment. However, there aren't those deadlines on the department side. So we're trying to create that
Right.
predictability and that stability for businesses to plan, to be able to know when they're going to have the final determination and if they're going to have to at that time appeal up to the BTA.
And so if this process is because even still, we're appealing to the BTA after a year, but after 1 year, you're
hmm
going through this and you've hit the 1 year mark, interest stops,
hmm
correct?
Correct.
And really, it's sad they're collecting interest on you while you're appealing this whole thing. And the more they draw this out, you're still paying interest on whatever it is that you're going to lose out on. And you shouldn't, really, honestly, you shouldn't have to be paying interest when you're appealing the thing to begin with. Interest ought to stop immediately. I don't know that we can do that, but we can at least say, okay, after a year, you're definitely not going to pay any interest on this while it's being resolved. I
Exactly.
think that's 100% reasonable.
Agree.
And then we create the problem resolution officer, which is what we
hmm
started off. Why do we need that?
Yeah. So there are times, you know, inconsistent processes and timelines right now. We want to ensure that our taxpayers, you know, maybe they're in an active case, maybe they have inquiries, not sure if something rises to the level of having to get an attorney and go through it. We want to have them have a clear person at the department that they can reach out to and know they'll get a response. And the problem resolution officer, as I mentioned, is already created in law, but we really want to raise awareness and make people aware that this is something that exists. I know back in the day, I had heard from members that this was actually on the front page of the tax department website. Hey, you can reach out to the PRO and get resolution that way. And we'd love to get it back to that state where it is that obvious. It is clear for our taxpayers and businesses how to find that contact information and who specifically it is.
Okay, that's terrific. So big picture, and I think you've done a fantastic job summing this up really concisely. Big picture, what is this going to mean when we get this bill passed? What is this going to mean for our businesses across Ohio and making sure that your taxes are fair, that you have been able to appeal anything that you think is incorrect and get a resolution? What's this going to mean?
Yeah, this is huge for the business community. Economic development isn't just incentives, it's making sure we have a stable tax environment, and that includes tax administration and the system that kind of dictates that. So, when companies are looking to evaluate where to invest, whether it's an expansion, a new plant, job creation, they're not just looking at tax rates, they're looking at the overall tax environment. And this is a really important part of the tax environment, ensuring that they have timely resolutions. And so it's creating predictability, which in turn creates competitiveness, administrative efficiency, which helps our economy grow, and a fair process, which is a strong economic signal.
those things are all vital to our economic development right here in the state of Ohio. And if we're looking at companies wanting to come in, they're going to be exploring these things and finding out, okay, how difficult is it for me to resolve issues that I have? Am I going to be tied up for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years trying to resolve an issue? And that's just for 1 year. And then it could possibly compound 1 year after another year after another year, where you've got multiple issues just hanging in the balances where you're trying to get resolution. And that is a horrible business environment. And we want to make sure that the environment in Ohio is a great environment where we can attract economic development, where we can attract companies, where we can attract businesses to invest here. And that's part of what 613 is going to do.
Definitely. Our legislature, I know, has been working very hard to improve our business tax structure over the last decade, and 613 significantly contributes to that foundation and making sure our systems function as intended. I am really glad you also mentioned that, hey, you might be in a case and there's more stuff going on year after year. So you could be in a case and still be audited for the following tax year, maybe on the same tax type. So we're trying to just make it a very clear timeline, not just for the current audit or petition for a reassessment, but trying to set up future years for success and successful tax planning as well.
Okay, so Liz, I sure love working with you. Anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Anything else you want to add to the conversation today?
We are just so appreciative of your willingness to champion this legislation, update the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and ensure transparency and predictability for taxpayers. So thank you.
You're welcome, Liz. Thank you so much. And thank you for reaching out to my office. And we're going to continue doing great things in the years ahead as well. So thank you for joining me on What's Clickin'. And we will stay in touch as we make sure that we shepherd this through the legislative process.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. Have a good one. And thanks for having me on What's Clickin'.
Well, it was so incredible to hear Liz nerd out and explain the process to us, tell us how this bill is going to impact Ohio. Representative, any closing thoughts on this issue?
Well, I just appreciate Liz and my colleagues over at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. They do a fantastic job representing the business community in Ohio, and it's an honor to be partner with them in this process. And I think we're going to get this done.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see this bill move. Another bill that has had some movement is HB 58, which is in your
Mhm.
committee, Representative,
Yes.
Community Revitalization. I believe we are having the sponsors of this bill on the podcast next week. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. I mean, as we're recording this, and remember, we're always about a week behind in our podcast because we're not late breaking news, but we, unless you consider late being like not right at the moment, but it's just to give you an inside look in what's happening at the State House and what's happening in our community, in our district, and so this has to do with recovery housing, which is a very vital, important issue to those who are in recovery. And so Representative Justin Pizzuli offered this bill along with Representative Dontavius Geralds. It's a bipartisan bill. And when it started out, believe it or not, it was highly controversial because some of the recovery houses thought it was imposing on them. But what we did is we had several IP meetings, including with our own Mircea Handru, who directs behavioral health here in a 5-county region, including the district Sandusky and Seneca counties. And he had a lot of input in shaping this bill. He would have joined us today, but he's homesick. And so we'll get him on another time. But he was instrumental in this. But we're going to have Representative Geralds and Representative Pizzuli on next week to talk about the process in getting this done. We had several IP meetings and a lot of negotiation back and forth until we got to something and settled on something that met all of the needs, and all of the opponents became proponents. And it really speaks to the representatives on their work on this bill.
Representative, you've had such a big part in this bill and making sure it gets across the finish line. Do you have a preview for us for next week's episode?
I think we do. Let's take a look.
Let's do it.
Describe some of the mechanics. So what does it actually do? That'd be great.
The biggest thing that it does is that one, it ensures that the Ohio Department of Behavioral Health will actually have a hand on understanding the continuum of care when it comes to recovery housing. And essentially what our bill would do is streamline, give local prosecutors a little bit more authority and control, but also streamline how we should shut down these bad actors, because no person, if you're living in unsanitary conditions, that, by the way, Medicaid and other, there's state dollars that pay for these services, by the way, right? There should not be
Right. They
state
should be
dollars
accountable.
paying for these services, and these are unsanitary homes. And yet, in order to shut them down, it takes 6 to 8 months. These families need help right away. Not
So how does HB 58 speed up that process for us?
Representative.
Representative.
Yeah, just it puts House Bill 58 puts recovery housing under real accountability. We're treating it more like healthcare rather than just a housing issue. It requires the Ohio Department of Behavioral Health to set the standards of practice. And like Rep. Gerald said, we're putting more power back into the hands of our local officials to shut down bad actors immediately rather than a bureaucratic nightmare that we were seeing in Columbus. And also, it's important to note that we are criminalizing kickbacks in this system.
You've been listening to What's Clickin', the official podcast of State Representative Gary Click, covering Ohio's 88th House District. That includes Seneca and Sandusky counties in Northwest Ohio. I'm Janae Myers, his legislative aide. If you would like to reach out to us, you can send us an email at rep88, that's REP88, at ohiohouse.gov, or you can give us a call at 614-466-1374. Thanks again for joining us for What's Clickin' with State Representative Gary Click. We'll be back again soon to let you know what's clickin' in Ohio.